Hey everyone, my name is Jeff French and I'm the founder of Wonders of the First. And for this video, I want to talk about something that I just absolutely thoroughly enjoy. Anyone who knows me knows that I enjoy it, and that's collecting. There's a lot of times where I've talked about collecting and I've talked about how special collecting is in my life and how much I just truly enjoy it. It's a passion that I'm able to enjoy with friends. It's a passion that I'm able to enjoy by myself. It's given me countless hours of just fun to learning about different things that I might want to collect, and then the quest to go after and try to find those things. It's just been an incredibly rewarding component of my life, and it's something that I don't really talk a ton about this, but I grew up very, very poor. Literally, my macaroni and cheese had the government cheese in it, and that's no joke. That's real. And I enjoyed collecting then. And after I achieved some success in business later in life, I enjoy collecting now, and I've never stopped. That passion for me has never changed, and I enjoy collecting pretty much anything. So if someone else brings something up that they like to collect, I find myself just immediately want to hear why they like it. And it's not fake. I'm genuinely interested. When I've seen my kids gravitate to things that otherwise that I may have had no interest in, I immediately gravitate with them because I just really enjoy it. And I love to look for a thesis. It doesn't mean that I just want to go out and grab every single thing I can find. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm willing to look at and entertain almost anything and see if there's a thesis in there of why I think it would be a good thing to collect. And when I say that, what I mean is, there's some people that may collect something and they don't have any financial motive at all, and they just enjoy collecting that thing. Maybe it's some type of little pins or buttons or rocks or something that, there's just no thought that you're going to grow old and croak, and that your kids are going to look at that and say, "Ooh, wow, we're rich because, grandpa collected this particular thing." And there's tons of that out there, and people enjoy those things, and that's fine. There's still that sense of accomplishment. They love those things. They love to see those things. For me, I like to collect things that I do think will grow and appreciate in value. That is part of what I enjoy. I enjoy finding those hidden things that aren't super expensive today, that could be more expensive tomorrow. But it's not a purely financial motive that I look at. I don't ever collect something where I say, I want to collect this today because it's $10 and I think it can be $100. That's not the way I've ever looked at it. The way I look at it is basically, do I think that the demand of this thing today and the supply of this thing today, it establishes the market where it is. Supply and demand, that establishes where the market for the thing is today. Do I think that supply and demand is going to change over the years in a positive way that's going to make this item more coveted, where more people are going to want it? And are there catalysts along the way that need to happen? How many catalysts need to happen? Meaning, what are the things that need to drive that attention back to a particular item? And then where it's priced today and where the supply and demand is today, how much do I think there's downside in that supply and demand? How likely is it that all of the current supply and demand is going to, the demand is going to evaporate today? That's another piece of it, because that then creates kind of, what is the risk and reward of getting something? And so there are cards, for example, in the world of sports and trading cards, and I won't tell you exactly what these are because I don't want anyone to go speculate based on something that I said. But there are some particular cards that I buy today. I grab every single one of them that I see come up on eBay. They're in a range of $100 to $200, and I firmly believe that the demand for those cards is not going to go down. And I firmly believe that the supply of those cards in high grades is not going to go up, because I have a lot of knowledge about the particular product, and I know that it's very grade sensitive, and that the ones that are tens and gem mints today are pretty much the supply that's going to be gem mint. So I have a lot of supply confidence. I have confidence in where the demand is, and I believe there are several catalysts that could happen in the next 10 years, maybe sooner than that, 15, 20, that could take those $100 cards and could make them significantly more demand, 100x type demand increase if the right catalyst hit. And so I really enjoy collecting those. And I feel like I have very limited downside in them. I feel like I have wonderful, wonderful upside in them that if it hits. And that's the type of collectible thesis that I'll form, and then I get conviction in, and I'll go after something, and I'll just accumulate. So it's not that everything I collect, it's not that I'm just going out and buying some big holy grail that I've been chasing my whole life. I still have some of those too that I want to get. But it's not all about that. It's about forming those theses and finding the right things that can help kind of grow. And that's just what I love, right? So I give you all that background to just then help you understand how my hand, as kind of the person that's in the seat of stewardship for collectability, okay? Brian Tinsman is your game developer. I don't have the ability, the brain. I don't understand how the card abilities work together within a deck. Like, that's not me. Like I'm not that person. We've got the right person in the seat for that. And if you haven't watched the Brian Tinsman interview for why I believe so strongly that he's the right person, definitely I would encourage you to go watch that interview with Brian. And that really talks about the game and why he's able to do different things in the game. And we also talk about in that how one of the things that I brought to Brian when our partnership first started was, Brian, I have a dream of a CCG that doesn't reprint cards. And you can hear how he responded to that when I first brought it to him, and then how it evolved to get to where Wonders of the First doesn't reprint cards. And one of the reasons that is something that I wanted, it wasn't that I mandated it. It was kind of like a dream. I have a dream. I have a dream of a CCG. Let me tell you a little bit about like why I enjoy collecting like CCGs and IP-based trading cards and that sort of thing. So I'm a sports guy. I love sports. I'm the biggest Braves fan that you'll ever come across. I love football. I love golf. I love NBA. And that's definitely was my first passion. Baseball cards are my first passion. And so how then does a sports guy that didn't grow up in the CCG era, like Pokemon, and that's what, like I was older by the time Magic came out right as I was graduating high school. I think if Magic had come out a few years earlier, I would have been all over it. But I was going to college. I was busy. I was trying to work through college. Again, my economic situation wasn't great, so I had to go to class and I had to go to work, and I wasn't playing a lot of Magic the Gathering. I knew what it was. I began to hear about it, but I just didn't have the time for it at the time. Then by the time Pokemon hits, I'm in my early professional career. It just wasn't something that really was, I wasn't in that era. I wasn't endemic to it. So then how did I come back to then collecting it all? Well, I began seeing the cultural impact that those things had, and then that piqued my interest as a collector. And then one of the things that I really loved about going in and collecting something like Magic, something like Pokemon, was that I wasn't betting on the same types of things that I would on sports. And I use the word betting. I mean, if you're doing vintage, okay, fine, those careers are baked. But a lot of the fun is in modern. I enjoy modern. I enjoy collecting modern cards, but they are speculative in a lot of degrees. Like if you speculated on John Morant, real flashy player, he did some things off the court. His cards are way down, bad market coupled with what he did off the court. And you see where John Morant high-end cards are today versus where they were. It's pretty bloody. And you have guys that get hurt. Ronald Acuna, I'm a huge Braves fan. When he got hurt, his cards took a big dip. And then obviously also market timing and that sort of thing. But, injuries and all that sort of thing in modern cards, they're always there. Pikachu doesn't pull his hamstring, right? He doesn't twist an ankle. He doesn't beat his wife. He doesn't get a DUI. So you really and truly are forming a thesis around something different. You're forming a thesis around, yes, the IP itself and the positioning of that character, but you're also really kind of betting on the community, the people that care about that franchise, right? That for me in a CCG is what I really look at. And when I look at Pokemon, massive supply. There's so much supply of everything. Even the stuff, I mean, you take some of the alt Pikachus where he's dressed in the costumes and stuff, and you look up the pop reports on graded cards, and you'll have 1,500, 2,000 of some of those, and there's several $1,000s. It's because the demand is so great. There's just so many people. That's just a massive IP. And then you look in like the world of Magic. Magic's a little bit different because it is definitely more of a cult following that truly comes from the game, whereas Pokemon is a bigger expansion of the community. There's a lot of people that are fans of Pokemon that don't play Pokemon. not quite as many fans of Magic that don't play Magic. And so, that leads to a different kind of thesis in where you would collect. And so in Magic, you definitely see the things that have risen to this really kind of holy grail status. They are powerful cards, literally the Power Nine, the early 9 cards that got banned back in ABU, Alpha, Beta, Unlimited. The Black Lotus being the most powerful of all, and it's just this little dainty flower. I love Christopher Rush's art. I'm a big Lotus fan. I'm a fan of it because of its simplicity. And I'm a fan that this little dainty flower was able to end up rising to this kind of cult status. And so I'm a proud collector of the Lotus. I'm a proud collector of Rush, the artist of the Lotus, but it's totally different than Charizard or Pikachu and the thesis to form around those. And so, that's just, but what I enjoy about it, to kind of circle back, is that you're able to find a lane in these things of what is it that you think is going to cause something to accrue value, to accrue demand, which then begets value. And where do you think those catalysts are going to come? It's just a wonderful exercise, and I enjoy it thoroughly. So circle all of that background back now to Wonders of the First and the type of framework that I had. So one of the things, again, I challenged Brian, can we not reprint cards? In modern Magic, because it is so tied to gameplay to value, when they reprint cards, it absolutely drives the value of the cards way down. That's a fact. It doesn't mean that the oldest card can't still carry some premium over the newer card. It does. There is a provenance-based piece of the value, but it is massively harmful to the old cards when they're reprinted for gameplay. It strips that component of demand away from the old cards, and they just tank. And that sucks. And that's led to me and how I collect Magic, and it's really forced me into a particular lane because I can't believe in the modern stuff, because I know the reprint policies, and I just stay away from it. And I collect in a lane of what's called their reserve list. They're older cards that are that they've said they won't reprint, although they've done some things there that are I would say questionable, and I do think have caused harm to even my reserve list cards. And so all respect to Magic, it's what Richard Garfield built there is amazing. It's what led to Pokemon and every other game that followed it. But the reprinting side of things is one that I, as a collector, didn't like. But I do understand, and especially after talking to Brian, why it is in other CCGs. And one of the reasons is money, for sure, because they can put reprinted cards into new sets. It's basically repacking that value into a new package, sealing it, and selling it again. There is that. But Magic objectively couldn't exist without reprints because of the way the early design was. Garfield was blazing trails. He didn't know the popularity it was going to get. And when you had things get really out of balance on size and scope over here with the number of players, and then you have these older cards, if they couldn't get them, it could really cause a lot of problems, and they needed to reprint. But in needing to reprint, it also unlocked a perverse incentive that when they do reprint, it allows them to basically package what I believe is the equity that the market has established in a card, and pack it into a new card and put it in a pack and sell it. And then other CCGs, no one has really ever bucked that trend because the reprints are basically a money machine. And that's all well and good, but that's just not what I wanted Wonders to be. So I asked Brian, I challenged him. I said, can we do it? And it took a long time for Brian to evaluate before he came back to me and said, we can do it. And I was stressed on him. Don't say we can do it until we know we can do it. And again, if you have any doubts there, go watch that Tinsman interview. So, but what that now means for us here in Wonders of the First is now we have something that we can look to as a core piece of our thesis that other franchises can't. When a card is in its print run, you know that whatever version of that card you get today, the only additional supply you have to worry about for that card in the future is if we do alt arts so the art changes, the function stays the same, the name stays the same, but it's limited to a serialized run for that card of no more than 1,000. Okay, that is a minuscule number based on the circulating playable supply. So for all intents and purposes, that serialized supply, my thesis is it will have no impact on the playable circulating supply of a card. And so, but what it does is it allows us to take a character that is really popular and people really love, bring it back in a very limited quantity as a chase card in future sets to build lore around, to build themes around. I believe it's accretive to the old cards because I went the wrong way on my graph. I think it's accretive to the old cards because it helps new people hear about the old card, which the old card has a lot more supply than that new 1,000 serialized version, right? So that's where the card would be easier to go back and get. And then for collectors that want to do runs where you get a character that comes out in existence, they make an alt art appearance again in a year or two, whenever they show up in one of our special drops as an alt art, whatever. Now you start being able to collect those in a kind of a series, a run of those, the way you would one athlete over multiple years in sports. And I think that's really cool for our key star wonders. I think that's a really cool thing without impacting the playable supply. So no reprints of the card. The only exclusion is that serialized 1,000 supply of a specific alt art. That's it. So it gives you supply confidence that you don't have in other CCGs. If you get an orbital color match parallel for that wonder when they first release, you don't have to worry that that's going to get done again in 5 years. You don't have to worry that there's another stone foil coming in 5 years. You don't have to worry that there's another first edition card coming in 5 years. Those things give us confidence of supply that has never existed in a CCG. Because when Magic came out, there was nobody even knew to even think about this concept, right, at the time. And then by the time reprinting started, the modern era of all that collectability, all the boom was all with that supply uncertainty in place. And so that's a box that we've checked that I think is really amazing for Wonders of the First. The fact that we know the supply. Think back to that example that I gave you earlier when I talked about that particular type of card that I'm buying every time I see one on eBay, $100, $200, not a hugely expensive card, but one that I think could have 100x the demand in 10 years. Part of the thesis is that I know the supply can't change because sports cards are a little different. Even if they did reprint it, it won't matter in sports cards because sports cards and other trading cards, it is about the provenance of the early card. It's different than the CCG where you have that utility, the game mechanic. So the supply is fixed. I don't think the supply is going to change. Could there be some unsealed product somewhere locked away in a warehouse that I don't know about? Possibly, but I've made a decision that I don't think there is. And even if it is, I think it's probably damaged to a state that it's not going to grade well. So I'm really comfortable going after those cards. It's because I know the supply. 52 Mickey Mantles, we know the supply. Black Lotuses, we know the supply. 99 Charizards, first editions. We know closely to a certain degree, we know the supply. That adds confidence in a collector market. And you cannot rip any modern CCG that is not named Wonders of the First and have supply confidence. You just can't. And I think that cripples collectability. I really do. And so now another thing to understand too is that I believe that collectability is a big part of the survivability of a franchise of CCG. Pokemon has it from its early days. And again, a lot of special issues. Now, Pokemon's very collectible. So very collectible. Magic also has it with ABU and all that sort of things. There's a very strong collector segment. There's lanes to run after, even though they reprint a lot of their cards. They're so big. The franchise is so big. There's a lot of lanes to run in there. But the world is littered with CCGs that failed because they overprinted their product. And what happens is when every card is dirt cheap, because they're just overprinted, when a new shiny thing comes along, there is nothing to hold that community together so that they don't just chase the new thing. Because whether you like it or not, if you're a game piece person that thinks these things should be cheap, okay, I'm going to speak to you for a second, and you're probably not going to like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to be honest with you. There are a lot of other people that do care about the value of their CCG cards. They do. And when that value goes to near zero, those people will not stick around. And when a new shiny thing comes and they move to that new shiny thing, and your favorite game releases its next set, and those people are gone because they lost faith in the collectability of that thing because it got driven into the ground, their game pieces, then you go and you buy it from the company, but you've removed that entire collector base. They're not buying from the company anymore. So what happens? The company now is sitting on unsold inventory. The company's numbers go down, layoffs happen. They can't grow the product. They can't expand. They can't build new sets. They go bankrupt. Collectors are a key component to the sustainability of a CCG. It is literally the killer app. It's the killer feature that separates a CCG from everything else. Because if the game has really strong collectability and you're in your earlier days, you're in year 5, and you mess up, you release a set that isn't great from a gameplay standpoint, you still have a strong base of people that are not going to run for the hills because of one bad release. That release may do poorly. You may end up having to trash a bunch of product. That could happen. But the people that have collections, that have demand and are wanted and are coveted, they're not going to just abandon ship over one mistake. So when you come back with your next set, I got a gnat flying around in here, sorry. When you come back with your next set, you have another chance to delight the players, the collectors, everyone. And you can then keep going and right the ship. If you're living off of basically like a just your player base and you lose for one moment that momentum of exciting them, and you don't have that collectability framework, you're just a living card game. You're a board game. You're just a game, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not what a CCG is, and that's not part of the sustainability of a CCG. And so I believe very strongly that if we position the framework that collectors can have faith in, that the collectible market will form around Wonders of the First. Now, let me be very clear, because some people have come at me on social media and said, you can't just say it's collectible and make it collectible. I know that. Concede 100%. Like, I am well aware of that. The community, the ecosystem, the market determines collectability. All I'm saying is that it is important to us, and we're going to give the framework to allow it to happen. That's all I'm saying. We're going to try to create better foiling techniques. We're going to try to create a better framework of serialization. We're going to try to keep our first editions well balanced size-wise to the size of the total set. Have you noticed the way that we're doing our first editions? That we're not just packing out full boxes of first editions so that scalpers can grab them up and have all the first editions. We're democratizing those first editions across the entire flagship collect and play first edition run that is way more accessible, but it's one every 3 packs. That is something that allows more people to enjoy those first edition cards, but it also keeps the supply balance in check. That will help with collectability because we know what the ratio of unlimited cards to first edition cards are. Little things like that, little decisions like that, that are in the details. The quality of the product. Our product is coming out of from under a single roof here in the United States. And I don't say that to virtue signal that, hey, we're made in America. I like that. I like American jobs. That's great. But there are absolutely other. Japan makes amazing CCG cards. So like, it's not a virtue signaling thing to say that we're better. What I'm saying is that it gets it closer to home for quality control. I will fly there and be there for the ink dialing off of the CMYK machines to make sure that the brightness of the card is where we want it. I'll be there with the designers. I'll be there with Tinsman. We're going to have someone visiting the factory every single day during our production run. I say every day. He lives 30 minutes from the factory. He's on staff. He's got a lot of experience in this. Maybe not every day. I don't want to lie to you. So he'll be there multiple times a week. And we also have specialists that we've hired to really help us dial in our card quality. But again, the fact that it's coming from under that single roof, we don't have to worry that the cards are being foiled in one place, that they're being coded in another, that they're being collated in another. When you see things like collation errors, like where you have cards that, a good example could be the first, if you're not a CCG person, Topps for Series 1 baseball, which is their flagship, they did a special thing this year where they were supposed to stamp the first card of every player. It had a stamp that said first card. And they just somehow managed to forget to stamp it. And I think probably the reason you're doing a lot, those have to come from one location maybe to another. They get cut and collated. It's easy to forget it. They've packed out multiple superfractors, one of one cards. They've put multiple copies in product. Why does it happen? It's a QC issue. But if those are being done in two locations or by multiple groups of people and you lose sight of the ball, it's easy to do that because you have to produce multiple copies of a one of one. I mean, we'll have to run our stone foils. You have to run the machine to get it to where it's producing the ink right. Then you have your real sheet that comes off. You pull it. You say, this is the real sheet. You have to destroy the rest, right? And actually, I take that a step further. You actually will cut a couple of sheets because you want to make sure that nothing happens in the cutting of the one-on-ones. And then once you have your final run, then you destroy the rest. But it's not like you only produce that one card. You have to produce multiple. So then if you screw up and put multiples of a one-on-one in a pack, that's how it happens. We're working very hard to have everything under a single roof here in the United States so that we can be on top of all that. Now, let me say what that doesn't mean. This may be a good chance to hit this. There are going to be imperfections in our cards, just like there are in all cards. Like as that machine runs and the paper runs through, the ink there's a lot of stuff injecting all the inks. There's the way the ink hits the plates. The fact that you could have something that creates a roller line as something rolls through, just slightly more pressure on one place than another. When the cutter comes down, if it gets the slightest bit off, it cuts the cards off centered. If the blade gets the slightest bit dull in one little place, it could start nicking the card. Those type of things are going to happen in our product too. So just everyone to be aware, a near mint production of trading cards is kind of the factory goal in the best factories in the world, right? That's kind of what they're shooting for. Every card that comes off the assembly line will not be a Gem Mint 10. And if it was, we don't need grading, right? That's literally kind of what grading provides. And grading gives us that little extra layer of scarcity where we control how many OCMs there are. A common Wonder has 99 OCMs. We don't really control how many of those can be Gem Mint 10s. That becomes a byproduct of the production process. And I believe that's a beautiful element of collectability. It doesn't mean that I'm sitting here pre-baking excuses for crappy card quality. Please don't hear me wrong. I want the card quality to be as absolute best we can, but quality in the materials, quality in the process, quality in the collation, quality in the things we can control, keeping the blade sharp, trying to keep the rollers rolling consistently, all of those things. Okay. But at the end of the day, there definitely is going to be some variance in that. And so, but we're going to great lengths to try to make the best product we can. I'll tell you something that we're doing that's a little different than a lot of CCGs. We are actually in a CCG, you have a paper that becomes a paper. It's a core that goes in the card. And I don't want to actually show somebody's product on screen here because I don't want to, but I don't know how I could show you this without, I don't want to just rip another company's card in half and bash on them. But if you have some old cards sitting around, CCG cards, tear them in half and look at the core that is inside. What you'll find there's a piece of paper on each side, and in the middle, there's a core. And that core is going to have a darkness to it. And the darkness of that core, a lot of times people will use blue. That's a very popular one. You'll even see some that are on gray. And then much less common, you'll see black. And then when you see black, a lot of times it's a gray black. It's not a really rich black. It's not a dark black. Our art is inherently dark in Wonders of the First. It's just the aesthetic, right? For that to really present well on a card, we have to absolutely maximize opacity so that when you look at your card, you're not getting light coming through from the backside of the card. CCGs are so thin compared to sports cards. The stock is so thin. The reason for that is for its playability. So they're like 12 to 16 point. They're very thin. And so that core becomes incredibly important. We're investing in what I call our singularity core, meaning light doesn't escape it. It's like the center of a black hole. So the opacity is the maximum we can get our hands on. And the reason for that is so we don't have that light incursion through the card to mute the the art on the card itself. And that's going an extra mile. It's an extra cost. We have to get those out of a specific place in Europe. We have to ship them here. Then we produce here. It adds to a process, but we don't want to use the blue course. We don't think it's the best thing for our product. And those are the kind of things that can help, yes, with playability. Seeing the card better on the table makes a difference. But when you have this really dark art, and we already know that the art is dark, we have to do everything we can to make it present in the best way that we can. Another thing that we're doing that I don't think I've even told anyone this yet, but what you have, again, I can't pick these cards up and show them. It's lawyers are like, don't show other brands on different things. Like there are fair use ways you can show things, but I don't want to make a mistake there. So you've probably all seen curling of foil cards. It's really, really a thing in sports cards. There's thicker chrome cards. I mean, sometimes you'll get them. We're in a humid state here and they just curl up. So the reason that happens in a CCG is because it's a humidity change in the paper versus the foil board. So the foil board doesn't get impacted by the humidity. The paper does. So what happens is that card gets produced in let's just say it's a 50% humidity environment. I may say this backwards, but I think if the humidity goes up, the card will concave. It will bend towards the foil. If the humidity goes down, you take it to an arid environment, take it to Arizona and low humidity, it'll convex. It'll bend away from the foil. So that's the reason you get the curling in cards that combine a foiled substrate or a chrome layer or whatever you want to call it along with paper. It's a humidity driven thing. It's not a production problem. It's an environmental problem. And so the less curling you see, that means that your humidity is basically closer to what that card was manufactured, the type of humidity it was manufactured in. One of the things that we're going to do with our more premium foils, so this would be our OCMs, this would be our first edition foils, our formless foils, our stone foils, we're actually going to foil the card front and back. And when we do that, that's going to allow for that substrate on both sides, and it's going to help to offset that humidity process. Now, it will mean that you will have to play those cards in an opaque sleeve, which is everyone uses those anyway. So for gameplay, the back is foiled. It'll be really pretty. It's going to look really great in a slab. If it's a graded card, you'll be able to look at the front and the back and see the foiling. And the back of our cards are just beautiful with the first. It's we're working on a specific foiling for that because that one will need to stand the test of the time for the dual foiling. But that's the attention to detail that we're trying to put into this product. And yeah, it's something that I do think will matter. I think it will come through. I think it will matter to collectors that we're doing these things. And I think, again, if you then look at this commitment to collectibility that we're doing, the way that we're trying to make sure, let me tell you one other thing. So again, I didn't come into this with a script. I just came in to riff with you today about collecting. So let me tell you another thing that I believe in. I believe that pack pulled is king, meaning randomized cards. I don't really like, I don't have a greatly formed thesis around any cards that are print on demand. They're fine for someone that wants to have a specific card. They just want to own it. That's great. I don't really enjoy or want to buy a card that I know you just bought because you wanted that exact card. Like it just doesn't do it for me. And it's not just me. The market has proven this, at least to this point, that non-randomized cards are just, the market doesn't love that. Right. Example, there's exceptions to everything. There are some secret layers that people missed on, and those were bought to demand. And yeah, those have done pretty well. But as a general rule, collectors like pack pulled. I'm not alone. So having things be pack pulled is important to me. Having more things randomized is important to me. It doesn't mean we won't have any non-randomized. We will have some premium non-randomized, but we're going to use that very sparingly. And that's just going to be to delight the people that want to get certain things. I won't position non-randomized as what I believe to be the, this highest established framework for collectability to form. I'll never tell you that. I think that the pack pulled aspect is important. And another thing that I think is important is I do think that accessibility to the hits is important on a pack by pack basis. I think it's important. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're going to be working to have our flagship products, which is collect and play, both in mini box and in full box configuration. And then our premium starter decks. And then there may be some additional accessibility starter deck SKUs that we're still working on that won't be part of the Kickstarter, that would be really just to let people get their feet wet. Kind of plays off of Brian's nested set principle. So there may be maybe we'll end up with some decks that are really cheap starter decks, paper cards, and they're just commons to rares. So that's something that we're working on. But overall, the collect and play booster is the flagship. So it's very important to me that the collect and play booster then becomes the gateway to everything. And that's essentially the core of why Sparks exist, right? So if we create a very small production run of serialized booster boxes, and there's only 3,300 of them, and the hits are a little higher, we're not just going to go and sell those to scalpers who can then hold them and flip them back on the secondary market. We want those to go to the community. And so how does the kid that couldn't afford to buy one of those, if it was sold, if it was a super expensive box that was sold for dollars, how can that kid that only has a small budget, maybe he can only afford a mini box to collect and play, how could he ever get that box? Well, there's an opportunity in that mini box for him to hit a Sparks redemption that is big enough to go get maybe multiple of those serialized boosters. And now he has the premium product. He or she, they have the premium product, all from participating in just the level of the ecosystem that they're in. Now, that's an equality of opportunity, okay? It's not going to lead to an equality of outcome. What I mean by that is someone who's buying cases and cases of collect and play, they're going to get more Sparks. That's just going to happen. That's the law of large numbers. And they'll be able to get more of that premium product that we sell. That's going to happen, okay? That's the outcome. But the equality of the opportunity to the pack by pack basis is the same. And that's very important to me. And I believe very strongly that plays into a thesis of long-term collectability, because now, even if that kid that I'm talking about doesn't hit a Sparks redemption, not able to get the serialized box he wants, he or she stays in our franchise for years and years and years, and then comes back and says, now I've got my career, I've got some extra money, I want to go back and get one of those serialized boxes that I wasn't able to get when I was younger. Then they come back and they don't feel like it was rigged against them when they had that chance. They felt like they had their chance. It just didn't go their way. So now they come back with more confidence and they want to now get that thing. That's important. The fact that they had that opportunity, right? And I think that's part of why print on demand doesn't work quite as well, because you miss the sale, it sells out before you get there. I mean, some of that stuff, they put very limited run on it, so it does sell out fast, and then it gets flipped, and you're like, well, I wanted it, but I just wasn't the first one there. A scalper got it. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth. When you feel like the products are more democratized across the ecosystem, it leads to better collectability. So I say to you, high-end collector that would want more of the premium stuff, you can get it. You can get it by participating at a bigger level in the core ecosystem, and you will have a different outcome. But I say to you, large collector, that equality of opportunity is a big part of the thesis you should form around why you want those products in the first place. So that's something that's really important to me, something that you'll see shining through in what we try to produce in Wonders of the First. We'll try to engineer for quality of opportunity, not a quality of outcome. Randomized hits being the norm. We just want to try to delight, and we want to have fixed supply and give you the frameworks that you can collect around. And that's the collectability side of the house. And I'm going to do everything I can. It's a passion project for me. I can promise you that you have someone who is endemic to collecting, that understands the collector mindset. We may not agree on everything, but I doubt there are many mindsets of collectors that I don't have a pretty good grasp of. And ultimately you may say, well, Jeff, I would have done it this way. And that's fair. Reasonable people could disagree on a lot of things, but I definitely think I probably have a pretty good grasp of the different ways in which we can do things. I understand what manufactured scarcity is and what it isn't. I understand that when we stamp a card 10, it doesn't inherently make it collectible. The market still has to do that. I understand grade scarcity. I understand the thesis of how the game is the dog that wags the tail of collectability. And I would certainly encourage all of my friends that may be, way more collector focused to always keep an eye on that. That's critically important as well. But I have a good grasp of those things, and I think you'll see those things shine through in the collectability side of what we're building in Wonders of the First. I can't wait to build it. My personal goal on the existence set, it's a big one. My personal goal is to build the entire OCM set. Orbital color matches, 400 cards in their serialized border match color. That's my personal collector goal. I don't intend to just bull rush in and disrupt the market to do it. I'm going to do it patiently, but that's my goal. And I'll probably put together a first edition gem mint set as well. And those are going to be two lanes that I'm going to run in. And if I can get a stone foil here and there, some characters I really like, I'll take those opportunities when they come. But I think everyone can find their own lane here. There's a lane for everyone. I mean, the base set in a full set is an amazing thing to collect. And I think that'll be very accessible. I think that'll be very doable. And then of course there's the collecting just to build your decks. And that's the majority of people. The majority of people want to collect and play. We've done a lot of research on this. We expect that we're going to have about a 25% contingent of people that like the game, like the IP, like what we're doing there. They don't really have time to play, whatever the reason, and they're really just going to collect. And then you're going to have another far end of that. You'll have people that are only going to play. And then in the middle, you're going to have this large component of our universe, which is probably going to be somewhere in that 70-ish% range that are going to collect and play. And so we definitely feel like we have a good grasp of that and where the market wants to go and needs to go. And we're really excited about that. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really wanted to make sure that I hit here today. One thing I will say too, I will add this in. Remember earlier, I talked about how Pokemon had this big wide franchise. And so it leads to some collectability that isn't necessarily driven by the gameplay as much. And then Magic, much more of a cult following, foundationally based on the game. So a little bit different in how those two franchises have developed. One of the things that we're doing with our IP, we recognize we're not Disney. Like we're not, I've never produced a movie. I wouldn't even know where to start, right? I've never built a lot of different things that I haven't done. There are a lot of really talented people out there that if they see our franchise beginning to be successful and they understand that they can actually come and acquire IP rights in our universe and build off of those IP rights to have a built-in base of potential fans from day one, right? If Magic the Gathering had this model and someone could come in and grab Nicol Bolas and make him into a character in a movie, there's a contingent of Magic fans that would like that from day one. If they came and did a movie around, they acquired the IP rights to the Black Lotus and they made a basically make the Lotus almost like the One Ring, and there's this trilogy of movies, coming to try to find the Lotus. There would be a built-in universe of immediate fans that would be potential to watch that movie. That's super powerful. And that would, I believe, make those assets even more collectible. If there was a Black Lotus movie produced by a major franchise that had the IP rights to that and were building amazing things, I think the Black Lotus cards would be even more sought after. So That's our IP model. Now it's going to take a long time for that to sort itself out. The builders are, we have builders that are just getting started, and we hope more and more of them will come. And we think that that's something that could be a very powerful potential driver of a collectible thesis in the land of Wonders the First. So yeah, I mentioned that, and I think I hit kind of the most of the major points. If you want to know what the different hits are, we've got content on that. So yeah, so I think we have the frameworks in place, and now it's going to be up to you, the community, to take those frameworks and do something amazing with them. And I can't wait to be a part of it. I can't wait to participate with you all. And I think we are going to make something amazing out of these frameworks. So thanks for your time. And I can't wait to see you around as we start trading and doing deals to build our collections in Wonders the First.